Welcome to another exciting episode of Prepper Talk Radio with Scott, Shane, and Paris in the house.
Woo-hoo.
Hello, everybody, and buckle up because tonight we're going to expose some of your, let's just say, problematic things in your prepping life, your kryptonite, if you will. And before we jump into that, I want to remind you that this episode today is brought to you by our friends over at ITM Trading. Now, if you've never heard of this, you haven't been listening to the podcast long enough, but we think everyone needs to have gold and silver as part, not all of, as part of their prepping. And ITM Trading is fantastic because they are actual professional educators in using and utilizing gold and silver as investments. So we know gold and silver, it is real money. It's God's money. So if you'd like to learn more about it, you can go to learn.itmtrading. That's ITM Igloo Tango Meter trading.com/Prepper Talk Radio. Or if you don't want to be on there, you can hop on the phone, 866-257-0481, and they will give you a free consultation. So if you've got, like, I don't know, an IRA you want to roll over from garbage bonds and investments to gold and silver, that's one of the things you can talk to them about. If you want to just figure out, hey, what kind of strategies can I use that makes sense for me, my retirement, and my life, that's another thing they can talk to you about. So check that out. We love them. We work with them ourselves, and we want to share that with you. Now, today, I know you think you might be Superman or Clark Kent hiding in plain sight. Nobody knows who you really are as a prepper, but you've got kryptonite. We've got kryptonite. So we want to talk about our kryptonites, but also about the kryptonites you might be facing in your preparedness plan. And I want to hit it off with the simplest thing. And that's what we talked about last week, which is water. And I think that's where most people are vulnerable. And right now, that's my kryptonite. Even though I had a few thousand gallons, I'm in the middle of moving. I'm packing stuff up. I'm getting rid of things to try to get my house ready for staging. And I'm like, I've got to move all my water. I've got to get it all emptied and move it on. And so I've only got right now about 300 gallons. And I'm nervous.
But that's enough for 2 weeks, for a month at a gallon to 3 gallons.
Still, I'm super freaking out.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I noticed is a weakness of yours, a kryptonite that you just mentioned, phonetics, right? ITM India Tango Mike, ITM India Tango Mike. Learning proper NATO phonetics.
Fine.
Yeah.
Then I'm really that's one of my weaknesses as well.
And I'm not good at it either, right? But I think it makes a lot of sense to know those phonetics. I mean, obviously, when you're ham radio operator, Kilo Charlie 7 Delta Tango Victor is my call sign, so you kind of have to know the phonetics. At least have memorized my call sign, right? So there's one little kryptonite right there. Know your phonetics, your NATO phonetics. Yeah.
Well, another one is trying to use the military hand signs when you're out in a survival scenario and dealing with bad guys, right? All I know is
the stop.
And
yeah,
we talk about this every once in a while. We did the Ready Man Challenge years ago. They invited us up, and we went against a team of marauders. And as soon as
we kicked
their butts,
we kicked their butts. We did.
We kicked their butts the first round, and then they gave them the advantage, knowing that we were where we were, and reset everything, and they just picked us apart.
Yeah, well, they were filming it. They had to make themselves look good, right?
Yeah. But the cool thing, we had actual, a big team. And the funny thing was none of us knew each other, except for, you and I knew each other from before. And then one of the girls, she knew one of the other guys. And so you really didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so we're all trying to figure out how to communicate during an active firefight and, go over here. Go.
Yeah, it's good training. It was very good training.
It exposed a lot of the different problems that we have in our communication, right? And that's a big area, I think, that we can work on. But it also comes back to, are you actually working with your team? Do you have a team? And do you know what your communication protocols are?
Yeah. Speaking of communications, that's one of my weaknesses for sure. I'd love to know more about ham radio, and I definitely have on my to-do list to get my ham radio license and get going on there. A funny story, this last every month I go to a CCW training class with Todd Nielsen over at Nielsen Training, and check him out. His link should be in the description below. But he he set up the scenario, and we don't get to know the scenario. We go into it fresh. Like we have to stand outside the shooting range, and then he calls us in. He says, all right, this is the scenario, this is the setup. And he says, all right, walk in and go. And the first round, thankfully it's long enough. I get to do it 2 or 3 times and redeem myself. But the first time I went in there, I have my concealed carry. It's practice. Like you're in a scenario, you're carrying, and you got to go react. And I pull up my shirt, but I had a sweater on, and I pulled up the sweater, not my shirt. And I'm pulling my gun out, and my gun's caught in my clothes. And it's like, I'm grateful I didn't shoot my foot. You know what I mean? And so I pull up. By the time I got my gun up and shot the darn target, I'd have probably been killed 3 times. And so I appreciate going to those types of events and those types of trainings, because it really helps to build my muscle memory. And that's something that I highly recommend, that anybody who really wants to get good at their Second Amendment rights, they go and practice. Don't just shoot at targets. Yeah, it's nice to shoot a target, but it's also really fun to go through scenarios where you can actually walk and move, and like they have moving targets twisting and turning and all around, and you're like, which one should I shoot? Which one do I not shoot? And so those are some things that I do that every month now, because I need the training, because that's definitely one of my, I couldn't believe I caught my shirt in that thing. And I was like, I'm glad I didn't shoot my foot.
But yeah, absolutely. I think that's what you've mentioned. They're all great ones. I think communications, I mean, even for myself, I consider that a weakness, right? I do have my ham. I don't practice much with it. I don't really have a plan to communicate with my family, with other ham. So I'm just kind of shooting blind when it comes to ham, just kind of crossing my fingers, and hopefully I've got it good when I need it. Right. But absolutely a training, especially in higher stress situations, like you're saying there, Paris, is being able to clear your cover garment, depending on the holster. I mean, there's a lot of different variables, but you can also do that in your home every morning as well, Paris.
Practice.
Practice drawing, and that's part of my EDC. When I put my clothes on, I make sure that I can clear whatever I'm wearing. I adjust it maybe a little bit, and I've got several different holsters that I'll maybe change and adjust depending on what I'm wearing, and then practice and make sure that it clears. I know what I'm working on that muscle memory every day as well. Yeah. And just make sure that it's something that's on my mind every single day. And
I got some of those plastic bullets so that I can do that in my house and not shoot something.
Only several different holsters, Shane?
Only several? Yeah, go to my my Instagram page. You can kind of see.
Yeah, he's got a bucket full of them.
Dude, some Halloween kid's gonna get so lucky going to your house.
I have a weight
dumping those out. It's funny because it's like
few things.
There's certain areas that we could be like ridiculously overly confident in prep. And a lot of people get very overconfident as soon as they've got something taken care of. Like, oh, I got my food storage. I'm a full-blooded prepper now. I'm good. I'm gold, and they've forgotten a way to cook it. Or it's like that Gary Larson comic strip that's a husband and a wife, and they're in the bomb shelter, and there's nukes are going on up on the screen up above, and they're down in there, and he's got all these cans, and she's like, how many times did I tell you to get a can opener down here, Gary? Like, how many times? And he's just like, panic look on his face, like, oh no.
So right? I think what you're saying is that it can be hard to identify what your kryptonite is, what your weaknesses are. I think it takes a lot of planning, a lot of introspection, a lot of forethought to plan and think things through. Make sure you're not missing anything. Make sure you've got the essential things. And maybe, kind of like we're talking, that you have a little too much of something or other, or multiple things, right?
Yeah, or you prioritize the wrong things. Like it requires a level of maturity that a lot of people nowadays kind of hide from. That everyone wants to be the keyboard warrior, but nobody wants to actually look at themselves and say, okay, what do I really need to work on? What could really take me out fast? And one of those is making sure everyone in my group is on the same page as far as the plan. Okay, if this scenario happens, this is what we do. If this scenario happens, execute plan A or B, or what's the backup plan to that, right? Also knowing that everyone in the group can start a fire independently of each other. Everyone in the group knows how to use all the different tools independently of each other. Yeah. Right. There are other things where it's like, okay, so-and-so's the medic specialist, right? But you need to have a backup in case so-and-so gets hurt.
So along those same lines, here's what I was thinking as I was preparing for this. Of course, think Kryptonite, think Superman, right? What were Superman's weaknesses beside Kryptonite? What was his other main weakness that some people would look at, or that the bad guys would deem to be a weakness of his? What is that though thing? Can you guys think?
Well, they'd always go after Lois Lane.
Exactly. Lois Lane is his other weakness. It's family, it's loved ones, it's friends. So I think that's the same for us too, right? Our kryptonite, our weakness is wanting to take care of other people. But I think we have to realize you can't do it all. Like you're saying, Scott, with your plans, trying to get your whole family involved, and not people don't know this. And so you kind of have to know everything for yourself, right? Because if they're not taking it seriously and getting involved, then yes, they could be kryptonite and they could take you down, right? So you got to know when to cut loose and let them loose and run and take off without them. So that absolutely is a weakness.
I think that's what, if Fieldtac was listening right now, he'd probably say, anybody besides you is going to be a weakness, and that's that's where we're recognizing the reality that's true. And when you know that, and you're prepared for that, then you can be okay with having those around you, because at some point or any point, one, they could either be hurt and they cannot be able to pull their weight, or two, they could turn on you. And so that's something important. One weakness I know I for sure have is, and this is a little bit into I'm admitting here, my ego. I feel like I'm a really good problem solver and I can figure things out really quickly. So I've kind of delayed actually practicing. I've delayed actually learning, because I feel like, and this is again my ego that I need to repent and change. I feel like, well, shoot, if I got in the situation, I would just be able to figure it out, because I can figure things out.
Because you're smart. Yeah.
Because I'm smart.
Well, there's certain areas where you can do that, and there's certain areas where you can't.
Exactly. And that's where I need to repent and just say, you know what? I may be able to figure it out, but I would rather have some experience, muscle memory, along with that ability to figure things out. Because I do have one of my strengths is that I can figure things out quickly. As I see a problem, I can find a solution. But the reason why I have that as a strength is because I've actually done so many things. And so that's something I definitely feel like I need to actually practice. Maybe go find a first aid practice, start my generator, go and run it and run the wires and make sure I know exactly how it works.
You should be running it once a month. To keep the oil flowing, keep everything lubed up.
No basic maintenance protocols, right?
Yeah.
I've been trying to do more and more maintenance protocols on my vehicles myself, so that I understand more about how they work and where things need to be done and how often. And there's things that are still elude me really easily. I'm not a mechanic. I'm slightly mechanically minded, but I understand, but yet I don't know how to do a lot of things. And that's for lack of the wisdom that we all need. We have to have resources we can go to. And if the grid goes goodbye tomorrow, like, what can you reach out for and grab that's going to help you get through the next 90 days? That's the most perilous time. Really, the next 30 days is where we're going to lose a ton of people. But the next 90 days is how you basically build your future. Because you've got 90 days to make it happen.
I was on a conference call on Monday, and I got to be a guest speaker to a group of people about preparedness. And they, one of the people brought up the fact that most Americans don't have more than a day's worth of food, or they asked if that was true, if that was the case. And I said, as a financial guy, I know that most people don't have $500 to save. If an emergency came up, they couldn't come up with $500 to get through the emergency financially. And I don't know what the statistic is exactly. However, I do know that most people will not survive. Probably they could survive a week if they were just, rationed out whatever they had in their pantry. Because, like we talked about on the water episode, that we're designed to be able to go longer without food than we are without water. And so you could probably survive a lot longer without food, but most Americans probably won't live past a month if they, especially with food and medicine. and things of that nature. And so that's, that's a plug for Jace Medical. You use use code Prepper Talk for $10 off there, but you get your prescriptions, get your medicines, learn herbal remedies, and learn how to actually take care of your family for at least 30 days. Because even in, most scenarios, you're going to be back online within that period of time. Those extreme scenarios, you may not be back on for, some of the people are predicting if there was an EMP or really significant civil unrest that hit, that we wouldn't be online for 12 to 18 months. And that's a long time. And one of the things that makes me nervous about that I really kind of that kind of plays into what I was talking about earlier about how I feel like I could figure things out. But one of the things I'm actually nervous to do, I've been invited by a couple of neighbors who are really good at this, for like the real mountain men, manly men. They go hunting, and they know how to track, and they know how to find these animals, and they know how to take them down, and they field dress them, and they pack them out, and they do the whole thing. And I've been invited a few times to go, and I'm just that's one of the things I'm like, well, no, I'll just figure it out. I don't think you can. As I'm learning more and more from these guys, you don't just figure out how to hunt on your, as you're going out. You'll starve unless you have some experience. And so gratefully, hopefully these guys are alive when and we can all go together, and they'll teach me in the, but I should probably take them up on this and go now while everything's still good. Yeah.
Season's still going, depending on where you live. Right. And depending on when you're listening to this, but here's one of the unique things about like all of this is like, you have to start practicing what you're doing, and you have to make it a priority. Otherwise, it's a major weakness. I've got right here, as you started talking about first aid, I reached over and I grabbed my BSA manual, opened it right up to first aid before you even said first aid. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's one of the areas I like to have this simple little guidebook pretty much within arm's reach. And I have two of them. I've got one in my bug out bag, which is really my relocation kit. It's a bin. And then the other one I keep here by my desk. But I also have all these other books. Bushcraft. I've got Survival, the 1970, military guidebook. I've got Wilderness Survival. I've got edible books, like not edible. You can't eat the books.
I mean, it's obviously you need to have the books. You need to have the manuals, but like Parrish is saying, if you think you can rely on those manuals when it comes down to it, you're going to be surprised, or you're going to be taken off guard. You're not going to be ready.
There's the learning curve.
Yeah. And, I always went hunting with my dad and my uncles as a kid, but I could never watch them dress the deer. I just didn't have the stomach for it. Couldn't watch them dress it. And so could I go out and hunt? Yes, I believe I could. I probably could, would be good enough to go find the deer, be able to shoot it. And in a pinch, could I get it in up to my arms and dress that deer? I probably could. Would I be vomiting? Probably so, right? But at least I could get it done. And so it would make a lot of sense for me to do like you're saying, Paris, go with your neighbors, whoever's hunting. So I don't have any uncles that hunt anymore. My dad's, since passed away. So I never took up the hunting thing. And so couldn't I in a pinch dress a deer? Yeah, I could. I probably could, but I wouldn't like it. Right.
Yeah.
Or even a chicken. I know, like Scott, you've talked about that before, taking chickens and turkeys or whatever. And fish, I can do fish just fine. No, that's pretty easy, right?
Fish is so much easier to process
than a duck or a chicken or turkey. Yeah, absolutely.
Or rabbits or squirrels.
Fish is another weakness of mine. I mean, I fished before off the pier when I used to live in California.
We got to go, Paris. We got to go.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I was just going to say another weakness that I recognized earlier in my career as a prepper was that I felt like, well, I mean, if I need to know something, I'll just look it up online. Well, if the grid's down, there is no online. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I need to start printing things out. One or two, buying actual physical copies of books. And so if the grid goes down and you don't know how to do something, you're probably going to have a lot of time on your hands. So you can probably read pretty fast and get caught up. So the learning curve can be a little faster when you don't have to do a 9 to 5 or something else that's, bug in your way. But still, it's a good idea. Get books, get hardcover books, and then also soft cover too, whatever. Just get books and then read through them and keep yourself fresh on that stuff. Because if you start reading them now, you're going to have a much better, faster learning curve when you need to.
Absolutely. Whatever you can do now is going to simplify things. when it gets tough.
What's interesting is so we're talking about like what's affecting us, right? What the things that we are concerned with our personal kryptonites. But when you look at it from a larger scale scenario, it's interesting because like I read an article earlier about from the Pew Research Center, and they're actually talking about like they research all the public opinions, right? The number one concern people have in America is a cyber attack from another country.
Interesting.
What's
wrong.
interesting is also the number one issue that could disrupt America the most is a grid failure.
Mm-hmm.
A grid failure because we have 3 grids in America. We have the Eastern grid, the Western grid, and the Texas grid. Now, we saw what happened with Texas a few years ago, or a year ago, when their grid started having issues. Now, think about it on a larger scale. If the Western grid or the Eastern grid go down, that affects the other 2 grids because they all interconnect to some degree, and there's power is generated in other areas that go to that area. So what's going to happen if the grid goes down? Most people are going to lose all the food in their fridge, which let's look at a study from 2007. I used this when I was creating the funding platform for PrepperCon back in 2014. I read this article that talked about in 2007, 1 in 10 families had at most a 3-day supply of food in their household. So that meant on a greater scale, out of 100, 90 people didn't have a 3-day supply of food in their home.
Wow.
That's how drastic it was then. Now think about all of the on-demand life choices everyone makes today. Oh, there's an app for that. I can download a movie. I can download a book that I might read later, right?
I can Grubhub.
Order Grubhub. I don't need a fridge anymore. I can just, okay, maybe you don't need a fridge, but you still need food in your house.
I don't need cash because I can just use a credit card or digital,
exactly.
currency,
Right.
whatever.
And then those go down. How do you get anything?
Mm-hmm.
We had power failure a few weeks back when I was out doing my delivery route, and the entire city that I was in, the grid was down. And I didn't have much food with me. I had plenty of beverages, but I was hungry, and I'm like, I just pulled up to Wendy's, and they're like, oh, the power just went down. It came back on, but we can't process cards. And I'm like, perfect. Handed her cash, and she's like, oh, I don't know how to make change. Really?
Well, let me teach you.
So I taught her how to make change, and I was able to get my food. But everyone else that was going through the line was like, "Oh, and they just pull away. They're like, I can't do anything."
Well, here's something I think I brought this up before. PowerOutage.us. This app here. I check this every day.
I love that.
So one of the thing I check this every morning to kind of see what's happened overnight. And so one of my key signals that I'm kind of taking, okay, when am I going to bug out, is when power outages become widespread. That kind of indicates to me, oh, something's happening, right? So just a little prepper tip there. Pull that up and keep an eye. It's very visual. Obviously, you can see if you look on our YouTube channel, you can see this a lot. It highlights the states.
And of course, California has a power outage right now.
Exactly.
Here, now you guys can see it.
Always has it. Yeah, there's always an outage. Yeah, perfect. In California and Texas a lot too. But and obviously when the storms come through, you can see the outages. But I'm looking for something that's more of an anomaly, right? Oh, there's no particular storm, yet we've got power outages all over the country. Something's happening, right? So that's going to be a sign.
Well, this is cool because you can actually go down in by county. Right?
Down to county, and they tell you the exact
county, and it'll tell you everything
power
going on.
Companies they track,
providing all the energy, how many customers they're tracking.
This doesn't track all the customers, so it's not 100%.
They're rough numbers though. Like that's still impressive. Like that's Colorado.
It's very nice. Yeah.
Here's California where they're struggling all the time, right? Oh, let's get more electric vehicles on the road because California can power them. That's so dumb, guys. Get out of California. I left.
Well,
I was there for a little while. It was horrible.
I was one of our guests that we had on a few months ago, Josh Doan. He talked about we're friends on Facebook, and he posted, imagine being awake of what's going on and aware of what's going on in the world today and not having any preps for it. And that kind of leads into our topic today of weaknesses. And so if you feel like you're aware of all the political unrest and you're aware of the civil, what's going on in the world and the things that are, if you're aware of all the, problems that are in our, our own government right now. And if you're like, oh man, Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Hamas and Palestine, all this stuff, but you don't have a 30-day supply of food or a 90-day supply of food, stop. Get yourself prepared. Get your water storage. Get your food storage. Get a way to protect it. Get your grab and go bag. Get 96-hour grab and go bag. Get your ammo and your guns and go practice. Learn your first aid, and then start worrying about what's happening in the world. Because I promise you, when, and I don't think this is an if, I believe it's a when, that kind of stuff comes to America and is in your local neighborhood, you're already going to be ready for it. You're going to know what to do. You're going to know how to have the ability to do some recon, to do some first aid, to do some, food storage, to do all that stuff. It may not happen next year, may not happen in 5 years, but there's a high likelihood with what's happening at the border and all the different stuff that we're seeing in the world right now that there's some false, there's some things that could happen.
Be careful there, Paris. Watch the double F word, right?
Yeah, I was about to get banned on YouTube right now.
Never know. You never know. So might as well. I hate that though. I hate to have to watch what we say.
You have to watch everything you say, which is funny because it's like we can get canceled tomorrow, and I'm okay with that, right? But there are people who need to hear what we're talking about. So things you can think about, and we can add to this list, and maybe we should publish this in our group. But like, there's a threat self checklist you can go through and start writing down things that might concern you, but like, here are areas you should check to see how well stocked up you are mentally and physically, right? First aid, water storage, personal security, pews, security system, a team, right? Backup power, important documents, physical resources like books, magazines, instructions, right? And the tools that go with them. Off-grid heat sources and energy sources, backup generators, alternate cooking systems, stoves, sun ovens, whatever you want to look at. Those are just some of the different areas you should look at to assess yourself. And maybe go through and
I just went and bought another 5 gallon gasoline tank this last week because I realized I couldn't fill up my whole. I couldn't fill up both of my cars with the gas, the storage that I had, and I realized I need to have at least enough gas in my storage to fill up both of my cars once. And so I went and bought another one this last week to be able to do that. And so I realized, fuel is another.
That's a big one. That's a big tough one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Paris, for me, and our plan for fuel is always keep your tanks at least half full, right? So so that if you need to, you can fill up both those vehicles and get where you need to go, but have a plan on where you're going to go and how much gas. I only need a quarter tank to get to where I'm going with my big truck. For a smaller car, it'll take up maybe half tank, right? But I have enough fuel stored there as well as here that if I'm at half a tank and I didn't fill up, I can still get there, very, very easily, right? So just to store according to your plan, because fuel is, gas in particular is difficult to store. It's dangerous. You have to rotate it, all kinds of stuff. So just figure out what your plan is, and and then winter's coming up too. So fuel in how to heat your home. You're not going to heat it with electricity. You're just not with your little backup power solar generators. You're just not going to heat anything with that. So,
I want to add to your list something, Scott, that I think is important as well, is your physical fitness. And, if you're not in a position right now where you could carry a load or you could hike a mile, even, for goodness sakes, I mean, shoot, let's bring it to a minimum here. If you can't run for 10 minutes straight, if you have some of those kinds of concerns, now, of course, people have real legitimate health issues that I'm not talking about those folks. I'm talking about if you have the capacity to lose a few pounds, and you should do it. You should get onto that as quickly as you can. And not just that, but learn to eat more healthy foods so that you're not. One of the things that my wife has been working on recently is she had some prescriptions that she was given. And she's worked really diligently to get off of those prescriptions over the last little while. And shortly she will be, because she's weaned herself off slowly but surely. And I think that's a really good idea. I'd like to just share that with anybody out there that's listening that has some prescriptions that they could probably get off of if they would just change their diet, change their exercise habits, and change some of those things. That way you don't have to rely on those things when the grid goes down and you're like, oh crap, I'm overweight and I have my diet, my insulin. And if I would have just exercised and ate right, I would not have to even worry about insulin.
So I think,
or whatever.
For me, that my big sugar, it's just sugar. I think we would do well just to eliminate sugar from our diets.
Yeah, especially processed sugar.
Exactly. Essentially.
That's
really what I mean is processed sugar. And as I have a Dr. Pepper here, which I never, ever have, but got to stay awake too. but yeah, I mean, and that is well known. You hear that, sugar is just as addictive as cocaine. Okay, I don't know about that. I have nothing to compare it to. But if that is true, all more priority to, like you say, eat better, get rid of those bad things, processed foods, processed sugars, and so forth, and get some real food, because we know real food is medicine. And like I said, that ties perfectly in to getting off prescriptions and having real medicine, because Mother Earth can produce everything we need, and it doesn't have to come from petroleum like these.
It's amazing, like
these drugs.
We used to see medical professionals who were healers, and they would give you the herbs and natural remedies to heal your body. And now they don't talk about that. In you go to the doctors, they never talk about healing. They only ever talk about treating. Oh, let's treat this.
Let's cover them up. Let's mask your symptoms.
And then they give you something that doesn't necessarily fix it, but that just helps you deal with the imbalance and get through life, right? Well, same thing with your prepping plan. You don't want to just treat a couple of the symptoms. You want to fix things, right? You want to plan for that.
Great point.
So learn electrical, learn plumbing, learn shelter building, learn sewing. That's huge.
Self-reliance in general. Yeah,
self-reliance. Learn animal husbandry, which is taking care of different types of livestock, right? Gardening, anything and everything, cooking, like all the things we've talked about. Like those are the things that one of those or all of them could be your kryptonite.
Yeah. I think it's important to take personal inventory. One of the things that I've been doing, and I recommend anybody who wants to really be personal development oriented, is I've been reading a lot of these books on Stoicism and being a Stoic. And there's some really amazing philosophical just things that are kind of expanding my mind as I consider and ponder on those things. And self-reliance is one of the big tenets of being a Stoic and having that as part of your life. And there's a big push right now. And I feel like there needs to be a counter push. There's a big push to destroy masculinity. And the counter push is, let's get back to some of those philosophical Stoicism type mentalities and have men be strong and mentally strong and physically strong and not just strong, but also kind and have temperance and courage and discipline and all those things. And so one of the things I just really felt as a weakness in my business life, and this is something bringing back to just life, I find myself wasting a lot of time scrolling up and down on social media. And I'm like, man, what? And I honestly, I'll sometimes catch myself. I don't know if you've seen, like on Facebook and other places, they'll have like TV shows that they'll show on whatnot. And I'm like, I just get warped in and I'm like, you know what am I doing with my life where I'm constantly being bombarded with all of these, and of course it's TV, so it's make believe, but there's real scenarios in there of violence and murder and just things that are happening. I'm like, I don't need that. I just realized that. I mean, of course I didn't just realize, but as I've recognized that weakness in myself, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to have violent scenarios, even made up ones, in my mind, if I'm really trying to be a God-fearing prepper and self-reliant and really develop a type of the kind of person that I want to be. And as a disciple of Jesus Christ, I want to be someone who's got good thoughts constantly flowing through their mind. And the only way to do that is to feed your mind with good things and have that constancy. So I think that reading good books, watching good shows, having good music, all of that is a key element to becoming what I want to be. And I hope that somebody out there is listening has some of the same feelings. So
Well, I totally agree with you, Paris. I've felt that a lot recently for myself too. I'll find myself, okay, it's late, I'm in bed, I'm just gonna scroll because I'm not tired, and I've listened to what I wanted to during the day, and I realize, this is not who I want to be. This is not what I want in my life. Like time is, like you're saying. I think you mentioned earlier, Scott, is time is the most valuable thing I have.
Yeah.
It is the most valuable thing I have, and as I'm getting up there in years, I'm older than all you guys. So
And you can
not that I've learned that I can still
stretch,
kick and
you can
stretch,
kick.
but not that I'm saying that I've learned more than you guys in having my time. But time is the most valuable thing to me, and I was going to tie that also into what you're also saying there, Paris. You got covered a lot of things there. Of course, I think about, okay, got to bring Jordan Peterson into this, right? You're talking about being a kind person and being a man and being manly, and he also says, you have to be a monster, right? You have to be capable of doing what's the right word? I don't want to steal from him entirely, being doing harmful things, but knowing that, but not doing them is exercising virtue. Because if you are not capable of that, then how can you recognize virtue, right? If I'm saying that properly, right?
mm-hmm.
If we don't know how to restrain ourselves, we have that within us. I think you guys understand what I'm saying. Is you have that within us, in yourselves, but you show restraint, you show control. That's how you've learned. Like say, Paris is we want to be God-fearing men. Yet some of the greatest God-fearing men that we have as examples over millennia are warriors. They really are warriors who knew how to defend themselves. And this is entirely off topic of our kryptonite, but maybe not. I'm sure we could tie it back in here. But being able to be that warrior in the garden, right? You're warrior first, gardener second.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like with your training, with Nielsen training, right? I think that's extremely important. If you don't feel like you're a warrior, get there, and maybe, like you say, okay, we're not practicing it. When it comes down to it, I'll be ready. Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not. When you get to grappling on the ground and somebody starts to choke you out, you don't know what to do.
So here's the full quote. In an interview with Jordan Peterson, he says, everyone says, well, you should be harmless, virtuous.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't do anyone any harm. You should sheath your competitive instincts.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't try to win. You don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. He says, no, wrong. You should be a monster, an absolute monster. And then you should learn how to control it.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And then he uses one of our favorite quotes. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a man of virtue, it starts with creating a category characterization of what your baseline requirements are, your rules, right? Of what kind of man I'm going to be, what kind of person I'm going to be. My goal is to be very kind, especially to my children and my family, and then to be protective. I can't protect my family if I'm dead. I can't protect my family if I'm incapable, right? If I can't run for 10 minutes, I can't protect my family, right? There's so many different aspects to it, but like the most important thing I think is we as a society don't read. We don't. When's the last time?
Not nearly enough.
Yeah, every listener, check yourself. When is the last time you picked up a book and actually read from a physical book?
And nonfiction too. Nonfiction.
Exactly. I make it a point to read scriptures in particular from a printed book, not from my digital device. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the challenge that we're going to issue today. As we're wrapping it up today, our challenge to you is this: do two things. One, read a book that will teach you something. and add that to your daily list of things you're doing. Do something every day, read something every day that's teaching you something, whether it's to be a better person, whether it's to learn something. All right. Maybe you're trying to understand geography better. Maybe you're trying to understand the economy better. It's whatever it is. Find something that's going to actually teach you something true. Right. And then number 2, assess yourself and your family's preparedness plan. And if you don't have a plan, you're trying to figure out how to get started, go to preppertalkradio.com and go to the free resources page. We've got guides to help you kind of get started. And then also join Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance on Facebook, and we can give you some more guidance and tutorials there. But make sure you get involved and get going on this. Those are the 2 assignments. Go do those things, and I promise you, you will see an improvement in your life. You'll also see more resilience in your preparedness plan, which will then give you more confidence in your day-to-day living. And I'll leave that with you and remind you to stay ready-minded. The only way to stay ready-minded is keep the mind sharp. Keep sharpening it. And that happens through work and through study. Thanks for listening to Prepper Talk Radio. We appreciate you being part of the Prepper Talk family. We'll catch you on the next episode.
See you next
Take
week.
care, guys.